Good morning and welcome to this UK-India Business Council webinar on business culture, bridging the cross-cultural gap in the workplace. My name is Aina Gupta, Research and Communications Executive at UK-India Business Council, and I will be moderating this session. Communication is key to your India success. With English being the language of business in India, it is easy to assume that your new India team will seamlessly connect with your UK team. However, to get your teams working well together as quickly as possible, UK companies need to understand the key differences between the UK and India when it comes to work and business culture. In this webinar, we will discuss the differences in work culture between the UK and India and how to bridge this cross-cultural gap. Before we begin, I would like to familiarize you with the toolbox on the right-hand side of your screens. Just to let you know, we will have everyone on mute during the course of the webinar to keep any background noise to a minimum. But if you have a question, please drop it into the little bracket on the toolbox to your right in the "Please type your question here" box to send me your question, and I will take it up during our Q&A session at the end. For now, to make sure you can all hear me clearly, could I please ask that you all use the raise your hand button on the toolbar? Could you please click the raise your hand button? Okay, thank you. I'm delighted to welcome Vandana Das, who is a specialist HR and employment law solicitor with over 7 years experience in employment law at Davenport Solicitors. She represents both British and Indian clients from a wide range of industry sectors. She regularly advises businesses on the correct internal disciplinary and grievance procedures and provides practical HR support to organizations, in particular SMEs. A part-time law lecturer at the Open University from 2004 to 2011, she held the position of Vice Chair of the Association of Asian Women Lawyers. I would now like to welcome Vandana Das for her insights on bridging the cross-cultural gap in the workplace.
Thank you, Aina. What I'd like to do is I'd like to go through a bit of my... Sorry, Aina, if we can move to the next slide. So what I'd like to do today is go through a bit of my background, share some of my experiences with you, and then move on to the main differences in the work culture between UK and India. And then following that, look at some of the misunderstanding or miscommunication which could occur. Identify how to identify cross-cultural training needs, and then find how to bridge the cross-cultural gaps between your UK and your teams. So as Simon said, my name is Vandana Das. Sorry, I know that's it, thanks. My name is Vandana Das, and I'm the Managing Director of Davenport Solicitors. I also head of the HR and Employment Law Department there. I've been travelling to India since I was a child. However, since Davenport Solicitors was set up, my trips to India have become very much more work-related. And it was then I realised that it wasn't going to be easy to start doing business in India, having always worked in the UK. Having family who has close business ties in India has benefited me. However, as a British Asian, I can understand how difficult it would be if I had no understanding of the Indian mindset. I remember attending a meeting with a potential client, and I was surprised to see a manager touching the owner's feet. In India, it is done out of respect, but it was quite surprising for me to see this at a business meeting. On other occasions, I travelled to India with senior male colleagues, and I was sometimes acknowledged by some of the men during the meeting. Again, I found this to be surprising, as in the UK I've never experienced this before. However, India is very close to my heart, not only because it's my motherland, but a country with ample opportunities, which is full of culture. It's important to understand the cultural differences if you want to do business in India. India is a vast, populous and diverse nation with many identities, languages, cultures and religions. It is very difficult to make generalizations about Indian culture. And however, there are a few tips that can help you and guide you to understand the culture in India. So moving on to the next slide. What are the key differences between India and the UK? Firstly, timing. In the UK, there is nothing more strictly defined than the office hours. It's not common for people to come in late, although many employees do sometimes stay back after office hours. However, in India, people generally come in late, and it's part of the routine, and then they generally stay back till quite late. Staying back is a norm, and this generally helps employees get good appraisals from their managers. Productivity in the UK is generally higher, and one of the reasons is because employees generally tend to have their breaks while sitting at their desks. They still continue working while having their coffee or the tea, whereas in India they have longer breaks for tea and coffee. One thing I wanted to mention in terms of timings, the meetings tend to also last longer. So a 30-minute meeting could generally last up to an hour or an hour and a half. In terms of production as well, I remember when I was with my father, and he had at that time he had a fashion business. His production was done in India, and he always asked for the goods to be delivered at least 6 months before they're actually required in the UK. So if you are in the production sector and you need deliveries, you may want to ensure that you ask for the delivery to arrive 6 months before you actually need it. Processes are followed in India, but they are simpler in the UK. In India, it can sometimes be very time-consuming in obtaining approval from someone in the UK when based in India, and sometimes the team can waste an entire day just to seek approval. In the UK, you can simply go and talk to a person, explain the situation, and the work is done much quicker. A good understanding of the underlying values, beliefs, and assumptions of Indian culture, how they manifest themselves in the market and workplace, is essential for the success of your business. Greetings. Although this sounds obvious, it's important to note that a flexible approach is important, and it is often best to be guided by the person with whom you are meeting. Etiquette requires a handshake, although sometimes Indians use namaste, which is a common greeting in India. But in a business meeting, it's very common to shake hands. While entering a business meeting, it's always a good idea to greet the most senior person first. When exchanging business cards, make sure to receive the card with your right hand and put it away respectively. Sometimes Indians do get offended if no respect is shown when handing a business card. Small talk at the beginning of a business meeting is quite common and could include questions about family. Equally, it's perfectly appropriate to ask about a business partner's family, and in some instances, this may be a good way of building trust. Some business partners might even invite you to their homes for dinner or lunch, and again, this shows a sign of trying to build trust and develop a relationship. Indians love to talk about India, so places to eat, places to visit is always a good topic to start with at a meeting. Use formal titles, so if you're meeting a doctor or professor, they may appreciate being addressed by the given title, unless they indicate otherwise. But Mr., Mrs., Sir, Madam are very commonly used in India. In terms of business attire, India is diverse, and some parts of India are much more westernized than other parts. However, business dress code mostly consists of smart, comfortable clothing. A lightweight suit is appropriate for men, and ties are not compulsory. And women generally wear trousers rather than skirts. Business language and communication. So luckily for us, English is widely spoken in business in India and is one of India's official languages. Many Indians and business managers speak it fluently, though of course the meaning can vary across cultures and countries. Indians tend to have a difficulty in saying no. They usually use words like we'll see, or it can be done, or yes, but it might be difficult. And they find using the word no offensive, so they tend not to use it as much. Business meetings and negotiations. Give as much warning as possible of your intended dates of travel and try to schedule meetings well in advance. Bear in mind that the arrangements may change several times and may not be confirmed until the date of the meeting itself. I remember when I was in India, and before I actually went to India, I tried to arrange all my meetings. But when I got there, I sometimes found myself rearranging meetings, and even on the day of the meeting, in the morning I was still trying to fix that meeting. So be flexible and have that flexible approach. Although punctuality is expected, be prepared for meetings to start and finish late, and for interruptions to occur on a regular basis. Don't be surprised to see your business partner at a meeting answering his mobile phone during the meeting. Negotiations can be slow by UK standards, but be patient and demonstrate good character. Forcefulness is likely to drive the contact away. In some parts of India, superstition still exists, which is quite common, and so business partners may wish to sign a contract or an agreement on auspicious occasions, which is different to that of the UK. We move on to the next slide. There is a very obvious servant and master relationship in India, and when I talk about servant-master relationship, I'm talking about employee and employer. And in India, you may see senior managers speaking down at junior staff, and it happens quite often. Unless you have a very senior manager at a meeting, or an owner or a director, it's unlikely that you're going to get the decision there and then, so you may have to wait. Moving on to the next slide, please. Miscommunication and misunderstanding. As Indians are very reluctant to say no, it's important to listen carefully and be aware of the meaning behind these answers. Don't attempt to compel your contact to be more direct, as this can be counterproductive. A good way to seek a more positive answer may be to rephrase the question. For instance, if you're trying to secure a meeting and there is some innovation, you may want to ask what time and day would be more convenient to meet. If there is resistance in providing purchase order, for example, ask when the purchase order will be raised. This type of questioning is more likely to give a more meaningful response. Indian businesses often have a hierarchy. In negotiations, decisions are generally made at the highest of levels. And therefore, as I mentioned earlier, unless there's a company director, owner, or very senior manager in the meeting, a decision is not likely to occur at that stage. In India, roles are very well defined, and tasks such as manual labour will only be carried out by a specific person. An Indian manager is typically not expected to carry out tasks that could otherwise be undertaken by someone at a lower level in the organisation. So when you choose to set up an Indian-based office, you will need to take into account these cultural differences. If your office does not follow a vertically structured hierarchy with closely defined responsibilities, it will be important to create a feedback and communication mechanism between the UK and Indian employees to encourage collaboration and work together. Interactions between UK and Indian staff may sometimes cause miscommunication. So for instance, junior staff in India may not be used to making decisions or questioning senior staff with the same level of freedom as their UK counterparts. You may find that your Indian operations are much more flexible than your UK operations. Indians are often prepared to take on very time-sensitive and important tasks right at the last minute. Likewise, your Indian staff may find the strict timelines on the part of the UK staff challenging and inflexible. So training your UK and Indian employees about the cultural differences is therefore important for the smooth day-to-day operations. The relationship between employees in the UK and India will need time to develop, so it's a good way to try to introduce training so they get to know each other and work together. Moving on to the next slide, please. Identifying training. Working with two teams with different mindsets in two different countries can have teething problems in the beginning. But investing in your staff, training your staff, is likely to increase productivity. Think about whether the staff in India can be trained to understand the concept in the UK and the policies in the UK, if that's something that you want to implement in India. In respect of good HR practice, continue in India. Ensure employees are aware of the relevant policies and procedures. HR is a big industry in India, so good HR practice is always valued. Like in the UK, appraisals are also done in India, and therefore when you're doing the appraisals, take on board your employees' comments and identify where the trainings are required to make them more productive. Moving on to the next slide, please. So how do we bridge this cross-cultural gap? The majority of Indians already speak English, so we're already halfway there. But we have understood that it will take time to develop relationships. Things are not going to happen overnight. So when attending meetings, start by talking about general things, such as family, to break the ice and develop a relationship. Let staff in the UK and India understand each other. Perhaps even, if it makes it easier, arrange video conferencing or send staff to India and vice versa, send UK staff to India to understand the cultures more and understand the working mechanisms. Be prepared to acknowledge and be ready to face some differences. And preparation is key. Implement good HR practices which follow from the UK organisation to become a global player and to ensure consistency within your organisation. Link up with partners in India. It's advisable if they recommend it to someone you know, as referrals are the best form of obtaining business. And most importantly, understand the Indian mindset, because I think that's extremely key to understand how they work. And you see that it's very different when you're actually working in India. And next slide, please. So just to conclude, India is a multilingual and multi-ethnic society. There's vast differences can be seen between North and South India. Be aware of the cultural diversity. Be cautious about generalizations. English is the official language of business. So for us in the UK, it's a no-brainer. Going to India should be quite simple, and it's a great example of two countries doing business together. Be prepared for meetings to start and finish late, and for interruptions to occur on a regular basis. Preparation is key. Be aware that there is a more formal relationship between manager and staff in India in terms of hierarchy. Indians place a great value on relationships, so take the time to develop contacts and relationships. Business relationships are of the utmost importance, and Indians will base the decision on trust and intuition as much as on statistics and data, so be mindful of the importance of a good working relationship. Take the time to engage in small talk, get to know your prospective partner. Rushing straight into the business issue could be perceived by your business partner or potential client as rudeness, eager, and even desperate. Moving on to the next slide. And that's it for me, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Vandana. It was an excellent overview.
Thank you.
I will now ask some questions we received. The first question is, how can you find what partners to link up with?
I think it's very important to do some research before looking at who you want to work with. I remember so obviously our speciality is HR and employment law, so before we went to India, we did a lot of research about which HR companies there are, what law firms we could work well with in India. And obviously the internet is a good starting point. And then, as I mentioned, it's nice to have people around you who may be able to recommend partners. So as I said, obviously, thankfully I've got family in India who have close business ties. But if you don't, you might know somebody who does. But again, UKIBC, is a great organisation which can put you in touch with partners as well.
Great. The next question is, as we all know, India is diverse, and the question is that are there any benefits in bridging the cultural gap if we open offices in the big cities as opposed to tier 2 and 3 cities?
So are there any benefits of?
In terms of bridging the cultural gap?
I think it is. I think unless you don't bridge that cultural gap, I think it will be difficult to do business in India. I think what we're trying to do is understand the culture in India to make it easier for us to go and do business in India.
And big cities, is the cultural gap less in big cities compared to like the smaller cities and towns in India?
Well, when I've been in India, I usually end up going to Delhi, and then we'd go to Punjab as well, which is Chandigarh, which is a smaller city. But I think even in cities like Delhi, you need to understand the culture. It's about understanding the Indian mindset and the culture that exists to make sure that you can actually make the most of doing business in the country, in the cities.
Great. Thank you, Vandana. The next question we have is, what is the Indian attitude for common practice towards making payments for services received?
Indians don't like to getting Indians to pay up. It's pretty hard. But I've not had any, through my experience, I've not had any issues in terms of that from my Indian clients. But I can understand that sometimes it can be difficult to get payment. But it depends, again, that's why you want to make sure you do your research properly and work with reputable companies in India.
Great. Thank you, Vandana. The next question is, how effective is the social media like LinkedIn and FB for Facebook for recruiting in India?
So I think I don't practice HR employment law in India as such, but we do work with HR companies in India, and HR is a massive sector now in India, and social media, recruitment agencies are all there, and I think it's worth engaging in them to seek the right candidates for your organisation.
The next question we have received is a little interesting, and I believe it comes from the aspect of training your employees in India. And the question talks about how can one reconcile the requirements of the UK bribery legislation with doing business through an Indian JV? I believe the attendee would like to understand if there are any training needs to be done for the employees or the JV partner regarding the UK bribery legislation. I think that's where it stems from.
I think it depends on what the JV is. There's so many different types of joint venture agreements that you can actually enter into. But in respect of this particular webinar, it's more about your staff, doing business in India and also having an organisation in the UK, and how you can align practices and make sure that your employees in both countries understand how to work and be effective for your organisations. In terms of JVs, I'm not too sure. I think it will really depend on what kind of JV it's going to be.
Thank you. And this will be the last question. It is, how different working with local contractors and vendors can be helpful to businesses instead of onboarding team members?
Is that in terms of local vendors in India?
Yes. So basically,
Yep, so you can repeat the question again, please.
Yeah, the question is that how different is it working with local contractors and vendors instead of onboarding team members? So I believe on recruiting directly as compared to having someone on contracts.
So in terms of, I'm assuming this means they're asking how difficult it is to recruit somebody to work with for your organisations, or just getting somebody to work as a contractor for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that what?
Yeah.
I think obviously if you're working as a contractor, it's more of a self-employed relationship, and I think again, it depends on the company's ethos and the way the company wants to grow. I don't think that it would be a huge issue for organisations to actually recruit in India. As I said, there's ample of opportunities in India. There's a huge labour force, such a talented workforce that you're able to kind of look at avenues such as recruitment agencies, and then direct recruitment, i.e. interviews, and then also even social media. Putting out advertisements on social media is also going to attract the relevant talent. So I think the direct answer would probably mean it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to grow your practice in India, then you probably want to obtain local talent and hire through direct recruitment, in my opinion.
Thank you, Vandana, for your insights. They were very interesting indeed, and any unanswered questions will be passed on after the webinar. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope this webinar was valuable to you. If you have any feedback or comments about today's session, or a session that you'd want to see us do in the future, please feel free to get in touch. I would also like to invite you to visit our website and check for the webinars that we are organizing as part of our Access India series, a program designed to support UK businesses through short online sessions on a variety of topics. Our previous Access India webinars are also available to watch at any time. You may also wish to look for the Access India hashtag on Twitter to join the discussions. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.